And then
Okay.
you were talking about how some people are having this habit of of breath that is affecting other people.
Yeah, so, well, the main subject was that your breathing is part of a system and does affect other people. So in the case of a professional depressive, if they want to say, like, the world's such a terrible place, even if they just visualize it just before they say it, they can give a breath where everybody in the room feels like they're covered in garbage. And just one sigh and people feel hopeless. Any expert depressive can do this easily. So if you resist this, you'll get covered in garbage. So if you just become transparent and you're just not a terminal, you're not involved, it just goes through, that's one good protection. Another good protection, your hand just raises itself just before they do it and beams it away, for example, to the roots of a tree. And breaths, positive and negative, can affect other people. And you could, of course, wonder, is it just the breathing or is it the visualization that goes with the breathing? Did the visualization make the breathing? And so that brings us to a very ancient subject, which is subject to a lot of opinion because it works, but like the broken heart theory that could actually break the heart, the exact mechanism of how this happens is not so linear. So people can argue whether it's real or not. Yeah, so if we take the subject of meridians, like in Chinese medicine where there's certain lines of energy in the body. Well, in fact, when you're breathing, when you are imagining just happiness or composing music, or you imagine that you're going to go on holiday, your imagination actually feels a lot bigger than your body. And it feels like there's a large field of energy all around you, probably because there's a large field of energy all around you. And these things do interact with other people, and the access could be to change the field of energy, to change the breathing, to change how you visualize the universe. So if you were to visualize, for example, your friend in hospital that needs more energy to decide to recover quickly, and you have this visualization, with this you are going to breathe deeper. And you will imagine him breathing deeper even though he's in another city. And he probably actually will breathe deeper even though he's in another city, because you are not imagining that he is distant. So breathing is one way of knowing you're part of the system, in not only sharing depression, but sharing healing. And the way you imagine you're part of the system actually does help. Now, you could think of the same thing with food. You could eat a plate of food because you're hungry, you just want to fill your stomach, it's just mechanical, it's just a thing. And you'll give yourself a certain level of nutrition, but actually you might not use the food properly. If you actually experience the food, if you understand the food, that the smell is something that is nutrition for your higher bodies, for your emotional self to also be filled. After all, it's very popular to eat in a context where people celebrate together, eating or sharing of food. There's a certain emotional component to eating together. There's a physical component maybe to the physical nutrition, but if there's completely no flavor to the food, and much of your sensation of flavor comes from the smell of the food, by consciously appreciating the smell of the food as nutrition to more subtle bodies, to the energy fields around you, you start to fill up the whole system where your energy is flowing in a context. So eating, breathing, singing, everything, if you are feeling part of a greater context, then you are, and then the whole world can start to change around you. And, I discovered this, for example, while tuning pianos. I can think I'm just tuning the piano. Yes, and that's really nice for the piano, and you get paid some money. But if you feel you are tuning the house, that the whole house is coming alive, it takes no more time. And really, isn't that the best way, one of the best tips on running business? I knew this person, actually it was Robert Talk, who remembers going to the dentist with a smile. Now, how can you remember going to the dentist with a smile? Well, they were so smiling, they were so honouring him present being there. And instead of remembering that, well, is it nice to sit in a chair for an hour like this with your mouth open? He didn't appear to have that memory. He appeared to have a memory of how well he was treated. So if you're breathing, you're feeling in harmony with the house, if you're tuning the piano, you're reading a book, you're cooking the dinner, whatever you're doing, like my friends in Melbourne, they cook Buddhist vegetarian recipes from Buddhist monasteries in Thailand and in Malaysia. And they don't say anything about Buddha. They're just one tiny little statue up high, but they serve the food with reverence, they cook it with reverence, and they notice how people's lives change. Now, of course, because they were meditating as they cook, their breathing is deeper. But they're not thinking of it as a breathing exercise, they think of it as a cooking exercise. But the cooking in that way makes people just see the look on the cook's face. And you take a breath in to imagine how great that food will be. Like just remembering their food, I involuntarily just now took in a deep breath. Because their food was so beautiful looking. It was a work of art. And I had taken this deep breath, the emotion of that breath, in English is called awe, A-W-E. It's something so great that your mind stops and you just appreciate. You can't think a word. So their food inspired this emotion, and just to remember it, I took in, that's the emotion of awe. You take in this very high in-breath and you hold it feeling huge. And food can accompany this. And when you're helping people as a therapist, how you breathe will make a change on the client, but you're not thinking about that. But you will have feedback that, so happened that you took a deep breath when the client did. Good, it's flowing. So these breaths in life, people can pass on. Maybe the breath isn't the only way they pass it on, but it is a strong component of it, because it will always reflect in the breathing pattern. It also, of course, would reflect in the heartbeat, in the blood pressure, and it actually reflects in the galvanic skin response. Your skin physically changes by a vast degree. Its conductivity depending on which emotion. But of course, that's not something you are interested in measuring while you're having dinner. So, but certainly that's something you can be conscious of in life, honouring your breathing more, the subtle parts of the food. So the idea of meridians, has certain lines of energy, and acupuncturists use these lines, massage therapists use these lines. Now, some of those lines appear to represent the way ancient medicine saw the organs as being connected in function, which actually appears to be very wise to this very day. So in some cases the lines don't match exactly where nerves go. Of course, we're thinking in linear terms, like how the nerve goes from one organ to another. But to any endocrinologist, the connection between the glands is that of very complex chemical interactions, not just a direct linear response. Your DNA has the information to generate your whole body, but has no picture of a little person inside it. So, irrespective of whether the meridians follow or not, in some cases follow, in some cases not follow, what would people call lines of energy as in the nervous system, they do follow how functions seem to connect. Now, because they've been used that way for thousands of years, even if they are or are not the only way to think of something, the fact is they are a map, and you can use almost any map, especially one that's been used before. We take the example of fire walking. You walk on something that's burning red hot, your feet burn, except when you're fire walking. So when you're fire walking for many thousands of years, you walk on this official place where feet don't burn and feet don't burn. Now, if a little hot coal is outside of the official area, one hot coal is separate, that will burn your foot because it's outside of the area where feet don't burn when you're walking on 1,000 coals. So there are many supposed explanations, like think positive and whatever. But however, every explanation for fire walking is different than every other explanation. And my explanation is that the fire walking rules for thousands of years have been the fire walking rules. And in there is outside of the non-fire walking rules. So ancient Chinese medicine, whether you find some parts rational or not, if they were working, then you would use those. Now, if you see some parts which, for example, say, rhinoceros horn gives you an erection because a rhinoceros horn is solid, well, I don't find it at all acceptable to mistreat the rhinoceros, because that's clearly a description of sympathetic magic. That means you take a symbol similar to the thing you want, and you believe that you hold this symbol, and that gives you that result. And why not? I mean, if somebody prays that they get a result, and somebody else uses a symbol, and that's their idea of praying to get a result, why not? So why not use, say, a stick you find by the road instead of a rhinoceros horn for that same purpose? You can use the structure of these ancient systems without having to go to great expense or endangering wild animals. just to match their theory. Like, if that theory works, the rhinoceros horn gave anyone an erection, well, maybe you go to the sex shop and buy a wooden penis, or whatever for you will be that sympathetic magic. But what it feels like when you breathe is the energy channels are woken up. But it does not actually feel like they're just inside the body, like the maps of Chinese medicine. That is not the only map. So then there are other maps like chakras, other maps like subtle bodies. So in fact, one doesn't have to get over technical, but simply leave, as one breathes, the idea that breathing is only in the body. The same as your food does, in fact, have smell. And smell is, in fact, an important part of you knowing what it tastes like. And that is an important part of how good you feel while you're eating, so why not also know that your subtle bodies are getting fed? Now, does it actually come from the food, the smell of the food, or does it come from how happy you are as you feel that you're participating in nature? To even think about that is getting too intellectual. What one does is lose the barriers that is only happening in your skin, because nothing is. And as you breathe, you can be breathing with the universe, or whatever size and stage you want, because the essential thing is you're getting back into rhythm, and anybody playing ugly emotional tricks on you is walking into a room with the whole body language will be matching the game they're playing, which will include dysfunctional breathing, which could trick you. So one way to protect yourself will be simply observe that breath, and for example, if they're taking a breath which would make you feel really bad, if you chose to breathe it through, accept it. Not in, breathe it through you. Like you're transparent to it, like the light shining through glass. Or you could decide that you take an out breath and you're spiraling a hurricane around you. So then their negative breath will simply speed up and leave, and they'll be a happy person, and nobody in the room will be negative. You know, there's so many ways you could respond to it. But the way most people respond to it is the whole room gets depressed. Ugh. Oh, I feel so bad when that person comes in. You know, people normally respond the same fixed way to the same animal negative body language. So there's so many different breaths you could use, which will protect yourself. And the only thing which will damage you is wishing you're protected. Like, put up a protective barrier. That means what this person did is real. So if you, simply to breathe in as they breathe out with it consciously, then you won't breathe it in unconsciously. As long as you do the complete opposite to the normal conditioning of society, your breathing will protect you fine. Good. Another question? Or to turn the camera off?
Off, or for
Okay,
safety.
Good.